Now, the question we're looking to resolve in this video is, does the system want you to fail? Because in my experience, from the way the system operates, the way the companies operate, employers, society at large, the government and things like that, they're setting up people to fail. They really want to crush people, and particularly crush the middle class. So in this video, we're going to hear the stories of a few different people, and we're going to provide some commentary and see how we can relate to that, how we can learn from that, and really understand and undermine this system, this matrix, however you'd like to define it.
Bro, once you really sit down and think about it, everything in this motherfucker is designed for motherfuckers to fail. I'm sitting here waiting to get my truck loaded so I can start my fucking day for the company that barely pays me enough to keep my life together, slightly. And I can't just abruptly leave this motherfucker, because where else am I gonna get the money from? I truly believe that I'm talented enough to, you know, make something happen and make something shake, and maybe 6 months to a year from now. However, where is that initial funding going to come from?
Understand, like, you know, you're almost born into a system that's a scam, right? You're born as like a wage debt slave. Typically, you know, your parents might not come from the most wealthy background. They haven't been set up to succeed, in a sense. The system deliberately giving them a trashy deal, right? A bad deal. And then you might go to college, you might go to university, you'd be in significant amounts of debt. This school doesn't really train you to like understand life skills, financial literacy, things like that. It's a bit of a scam. And a lot of the job searching is not necessarily in favor of workers, particularly now. So you might be working hard to do your day job and save your money and invest your money, but also looking for another job, right? That was going to pay more. So it's almost like you're doing 3 jobs at once. Plus, particularly now, you know, people are mostly single. So not only are they, you know, working maybe a low paid, stressful job compared to what the market price would be. They're dealing with the inflation and the high cost of living. And you throw that in with, like I say, most people are singles. They're probably doing all the household chores, cooking, cleaning, everything for themselves. And on top of that, then you've got like, oh, you've got a job search for a job that's going to pay more. You're going to have to deal with pointless interviews, lots of pointless job applications that are not going to work out until something does. So it's really a difficult time for many people right now. And this is what I mean about the system setting you up to fail. They're deliberately kind of undermining you, pulling the rug from up under you. If you do kind of complain about the economy, they're going to say, well, based on Joe Biden's economy, there's not really Biden inflation, everything's fine, Kamala's gonna fix everything, even though she had 4 years and didn't do anything. So you've got all these things, so this gaslighting that the economy is doing well, maybe because the stock market's being artificially propped up by government money, central bank money printing. You're told, oh, well, you should be okay with it. What's going on? Why are you complaining about the economy is doing well? They'll rig the employment numbers and make it seem like, oh, unemployment isn't as bad as you really think it is, when it actually is. Many people are relying on gig economy jobs, food delivery jobs, odd work on the weekend, kind of like whatever work they can pick up on the weekend to make some extra money. So the system really is a scam, right? And it really does want you to fail. Otherwise, the same way the system is giving tons of free money, free resources, free accommodation, smartphones and things like that to migrants coming across the border, whether it's in Europe, the UK, US, elsewhere, Australia, places like that, Canada. This government gives them such an easy ride and then puts the pressure of that on you with higher tax burdens, higher crime that you can't even speak about. And then they're censoring you effectively from complaining about anything, or gaslighting you and saying your complaining is kind of invalid. So that's how the system's a scam economically and socially.
Hospital bills is a fucking scam. Insurance is a fucking scam. Rent is a scam. Mortgages are scams. Just living in general is a fucking scam. The majority of ways to make enough money really fast are very unethical and highly illegal. Yet the people who call it illegal are the ones who do it the fucking most. That's the craziest fucking part. You gotta hope your car doesn't fucking break down, because if it does, a mechanic's gonna hold the shit for months because he or she is backed up forever. And it's like, okay, you got my car. How the fuck am I supposed to get to and from? They tell you to save and invest and all this shit, but it's like, you taking that investment as a risk. Now, you can't win life without taking a risk. However, if the shit don't work out, you're fucked. A lot of people stay up late as a bitch knowing they got to be to work tomorrow early as hell in the morning, only because their job took away the majority of their day, and the only way for them to feel some type of control over their life is to stay up past the point in which they know they need to go to sleep to get a productive day the next day. I can't remember exactly what that phrase is called, but it's a real thing. And then on top,
so this is quite kind of funny, right? So firstly, It's true. You're taking a risk, and what we're posing here is not necessarily anti-capitalism; it's anti-corruption. You don't want crony capitalism where the system is so rigged against you. When the big banks fail, they're too big to fail, so they get a bailout. But if you're dealing with difficulty, you're not really going to get a handout from the system. So what we're really saying is we're anti this unfair, corrupt system, right? That's what we're against. There's a complete lack of accountability for these governments, managers at work, corporations, and things like this. And the system is pushing the masses until they snap, and or they explode, or there's some kind of civil unrest. And you see this in parts of the UK, parts of America, and other, the trucker protest in Canada, things like this. The system keeps pushing people until they say, listen, I've had enough. And this system, when you're walking down the street, you don't want to, if you see a wild animal like a stray fox, a stray dog, cat, things like that, you wouldn't necessarily back them into a corner, because if you back a wild animal, a wild fox, a wild dog into a corner, they're going to attack, because they're going to see you as a threat. They're going to see you as a life or death situation. And that's what this system's doing at a macro level. It's really pushing people and backing them into a corner. And some people are snapping because they've had enough, right? And it's good what you were saying earlier about investing, right? The truth is a lot of, and I think I say is financial advice here, but a lot of investments that you're promoted on public platforms aren't necessarily the best investments for you. And what ends up happening is you would have these incredibly corrupt organizations. What they will do is you'll have like a major bank. And what the major bank will do is they'll send their equity research expert, their managing director, to go on news, to go on CNBC and recommend certain investments. Whereas at the back end, they might be doing the opposite. They might be recommending that you buy Bitcoin. At the back end, they're shorting Bitcoin, right? Or gold or any other product, right? So they want you to be the sucker. They want you to be the loser. In order for them to win, they want to crush you and they want to lie to you, right? So you've got to be clear on what you're being misled on, what's actually good for your health, what's actually good for your finances, who's trying to run a scam on you. Because this system is just a scam system. It's trying to run a scam on you, right? And the other point he was talking about is an interesting term called revenge bedtime procrastination. And that's when you have a long day at work or your standard work day, you feel like you wasted your day doing work that isn't something you're too interested in. And then you end up spending your evening and your late night basically staying up to live your life, whether it's spending time with your family or your friends, or to just spend time on the internet playing video games, whatever you're free to do. But the reason why you stay up late is because it's kind of this... on a subconscious level, it's a bit of a passive-aggressive rejection of this system, because it's called revenge bedtime procrastination, because you're procrastinating because you don't want to go to sleep early, because you don't want to wake up early and go to your day job.
But that same subject, most people who do that, they stay up late because they don't want to go to work the next fucking day. This shit is a fucking scam, bro. And after all of this bullshit, you still got to get up and produce something. Whether you're man or woman, you still have to get up and produce something. Because if you do nothing, you're pretty much just going to be on the street. And it's like, knowing all that shit, bro, sometimes that shit gets to you, man. Sometimes it gets to you, but I can tell you this. Even though all of this bullshit is a real thing, and yeah, it does get to me too, I refuse to let this shit bring me down. I refuse, because I know deep inside my fucking head, and it's more so on the forefront now. It used to be deep, but now it's like right up in here. I know for a fact that one of these days, none of this shit is going to matter, because I'm going to be in such a great position in my life that I'm going to be able to look back and be like, damn, I went through all this bullshit and struggle that the world just threw at me, and I came out on top. That may sound cartoonish, that may sound far-fetched, that may sound all kind of whatever the fuck you can think of. However, that's the only thing that keeps me fucking going. That is the only driving force in my life right now. It's not to be the best, it's not to be the greatest, it's not to be this, that. It is to get to the top of the fucking mountain through my own efforts and then show people that it's possible, right? That's the only thing that's keeping me going right now. You gotta find something to keep you going in this fucking crazy-ass world we live in, bro.
So this is a key point, because it's something I've dealt with and something many of you are dealing with, where this system, we can talk about the economy and careers and finance and things like that. We can talk about some broader social trends, feminism or whatever, all these different dynamics, but government censorship. But what it comes down to, the whole thing, it comes down to demoralization. And the system is trying to demoralize you, it's trying to destroy your mental health. And many people, if this system gave them a fair deal, they wouldn't mind participating in it, right? Like a fair deal, whether you could buy a house, have a family, things like this. But now the system's so bad, it's demoralizing people. People are giving up. We've discussed in many of my videos about men dropping out of society. People just want to make it out the system, like live outside the matrix, whether it's leaving the West, whether it's, pursuing freedom as living off grid. And what I want to know in the comments is what keeps you going, because I think the one thing everyone has in common is some similar circumstances in terms of the economy and socially. But what I want to know in the comments is what keeps you going and how do you deal with that intense demoralization on a daily basis? Because I think that's the real struggle, like being constantly demoralized. Oh, you can't say the truth. You have to censor yourself. You have to deal with double standards at work, which are covered before, like DEI and things like that. So it's a bit like, how do you deal with all of that? So that's a good question if you want to answer that in the comments section. Now, the next clip we're going to look through is a woman who is talking about her and her husband, and her husband's looking at getting a salary raise. And one thing is, even if you get a salary raise at your current job, firstly, I would recommend if you want a big boost in your salary, move from one company to the next, so you can get that big salary boost. The other thing I'd say would be make sure that if you're working at the same company, you do get a salary increase. You have to bear in mind that inflation has increased so dramatically that increase in pay that you're getting might actually not be worth it, right? Maybe you get a 5 or 10 grand pay rise. Of course, that's better than being on your old salary. But the issue there is that the inflation has increased at such a dramatic level that that salary raise won't have been able to keep up with it. And this is an interesting perspective here.
Extremely demoralizing knowing that realistically he was not going to be able to get a raise to even break us even on inflation. And then when you add the fact that you've got corporations making record profits and charging just insane amounts of money, it's even worse than that. And then it kind of just makes you think, like, is having a job a good, sound financial investment? Because if an investor was investing any of their time or money into something and they were not receiving some level of return, they would not be doing that thing. And breaking even or making less is not a sound financial decision. And look, I can hear you guys in the comments already like, oh, just go get a different job. Okay, let's say he gets a job making $100,000 a year. It doesn't matter what that number is. It's still going to be outpaced. If inflation and the cost of living continues to go up, we're still going to make less money every single month effectively, short of something radical changing. So it doesn't matter if you're poor or rich or somewhere in between, your money is just completely devalued. So every single day you get up, put your pants on and go to work, you're making less for it.
So this is a good point, right? If you're asking for a raise, it won't help you break even with inflation. And this is a deliberate move by the system to crush the middle class. They don't want you to have a house. They don't want you to have kids. They want to lower your living standards. They want to lower the birth rate. And the core of any agenda, the climate agenda, what happened in 2020 and 2021, 2022, where you couldn't leave your home and things like this. Every single agenda, the climate agenda, feminism, liberalism, the push for socialism, things like that. All of these agendas come down to two things. And these are the end goal of all of these two things you'll see. Lower your living standards, lower the birth rate, right? So all this climate agenda you see in the West and in major cities like London, for example, all these ULEZ, limiting people's ability to drive certain cars, is about lowering their living standards so people don't buy cars or people have to pay a lot of money to drive their car in a major city in terms of government road tax and fees, congestion charge, things like that, additional emission charges. So that's one example of that. And in terms of lowering the birth rate, you can see if people can't afford to support themselves as an individual, they're less likely to be in a marriage, less likely to buy a house or have the space to have kids. And a lot of the properties being developed are being developed for single people. You might have an apartment block being built instead of a house, and then there's not enough space exactly there for people to have kids, right? They might not be, if you're living in an apartment isn't ideal to raise a family compared to a house. So all the agendas are pushing for lower birth rates and things like that. Now, a lot of this equality propaganda that you're getting pushed on you is to make you forget that, Economic prosperity is a key thing for human happiness, right? What they're trying to remove from your mind the idea that you making more money is good for your life, and they're trying to replace that with, oh, we're making progress, not financial progress. The progress is equality, diversity. Oh, we have a diverse cabinet, we have a diverse set of politicians, so that's progress. That equality propaganda is making you accept less, have lower life standards, lower quality of standards of government provisions and everything else. They want you to be happy with diversity as success rather than financial success. But the inflation and the economy has got so bad, people can't be distracted by like propaganda about diversity any longer. Now, the outpacing of inflation, and the only way to survive that is to invest. And its system has kind of pushed people, and I'm not saying investing is a bad thing, but it's kind of pushed people who would typically be retail investors, ordinary citizens who would just maybe put their money in a savings account. They're almost forced to dump their money in the stock market, which kind of creates more of a bubble because we have completely unsustainable highs in the stock market, but it's going to continue as long as the government keeps printing money. So the only way to survive really is to invest aggressively, invest as much money as you can each month, so you can invest in the S&P or other financial products. Not investment advice here, not financial advice, but you invest just to keep up with inflation, to maintain your basic living standards. Or the other option is to make major life changes, and many people are doing this quietly, whether they're saying it to you or not. Many people are deciding maybe not to have kids, not to get married, maybe not to be in relationships that would typically involve maybe higher costs of weddings and things like that. And then most people are spending time more alone by themselves, like I say, on low cost hobbies, whether it's, and these aren't necessarily all bad things, spending time in nature, playing video games. You're going to see less people out and about spending money on, going to a restaurant and things like that. So many people are making major life changes, not only those big things like not having kids, but also the smaller things like not being social, because being social typically now, because there's no third space, right? There's not a lot of free places to hang out apart from parks and things like that. You have to go to a cafe, a nightclub, a bar, things like that, where you'd have to pay kind of overpriced prices for drinks. We see Starbucks prices and things like that. So many people are just spending time alone or by themselves or at home. And then you see what she's got a good point here, which is called greedflation, which is when companies do increase their price as part of the general inflation and the increase of their own costs, but they increase the cost excessively just to make more money. They're having record profits, whereas most people are struggling to survive, right? And then investing in the S&P and things like that, as I say, not to give financial advice here, but there's also all sorts of investment opportunities that you could benefit from by thinking strategically about your future and outpacing the growth of inflation by investing effectively. Now, if you are new to the channel, I have worked at some of these banks, Goldman's, HSBC and Morgan Stanley, for over 10 years in investment banking and other finance roles. I've studied economics at LSE, and what I offer to my clients is like career advice and some general financial coaching to push them towards financial freedom, whether it's helping you write your CV, develop your interview skills, provide a strategic career growth path, deal with those difficult kind of toxic managers and things like that. That's what I provide. So there's a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. I'll be happy to help you. These are important times for all of us to kind of think strategically, because the system, like I say, is setting up all these traps for you to fail, right? If you're a worker, you're going to work, you're being fooled and misled by your manager that you're going to get a promotion or get a pay rise, or that might not be coming. You're being set up to fail in terms of all sorts of, like misleading you when it comes to financial investments. We've seen many scams in crypto, for example, that have failed. So I try to help you see the truth from the lies when it comes to your career and financial situation in general. So there's a link in the description if you want to speak with me directly. Thanks for listening. There are 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.